Welcome everybody to Beers with Bill. It's my pleasure tonight to welcome Sully Sullivan from Gateway City Brewery up in North Bay. Sully, great to have you on the show. And we're going to start with Host Hour, right?
Yeah, we'll start with our Host Hour, which is a fairly new beer, probably within the last 3 weeks or so, I think, which is an English Pale Mild. Yep, everybody seems like they got it there. A little pour. Pours the darker golden color. We're big fans of milds here, so in this we got our Maris Otter malt, as well as British Light Crystal and Victory malt, and then just our bittering hop in there, which is Magnum, just for that light bitterness, 15 IBUs. Very kind of easy drinking with a nice full flavor to it for a mild or a lighter beer. So cheers.
Cheers.
So yeah, we're big fans of milds. I think our second ever seasonal release was a mild. It was an English dark mild, which we now condition with our local coffee roasters coffee, the Twigs Fire Tower. The Fire Tower was just an original English pale mild, or dark mild, sorry, originally.
Okay. Someone would like to know, first of all, do you do the artwork? Because you did say you were in graphic design at one time.
Yes, yeah, no, I started in graphics, but later realized my skills were better used in other ways. And we outsourced a designer for this, which is a very close friend of ours, Yan Roberts, does all our design work. He's a local guy, been just killing it for us on all the label designs. We kind of give them, for the most part, free reign on what to do with the artwork, except there are times where I feel that colors are better suited for a beer that's coming up or something, so I might ask him to change little things like that, or sometimes just little minor directions for them. I would say 98% of the time it's just what he does is get.
So Katie says, tell him to keep up the beautiful work. And Terry and Emma were curious as to what is really going on the can in the artwork.
On the can, yeah. So if I wish I had our English dark mild. So originally it's a groundhog on there. And on the English dark mild, it was called the Fire Tower, which is named after, a lot of northern communities had fire towers, even southern communities. When fire departments weren't around, and it was just someone sat in a tower 24 hours a day trying to monitor to see if there were fires going around in the area. So we have our tower drive, and it was a massive tower that serviced North Bay on top of our Laurentian landscape up there. And on the original English dark mild, it was a groundhog, which is a nearsighted animal, was using a magnifying glass, but happened to be starting the fires. So a beam of light was coming out of the magnifying glass as it was trying to figure stuff out. So it was the cause of all these fires. We also had a second tower in town behind our M&R, which is where we got the name for the Hose Tower, because it was pretty much because the other tower was a bigger and better view of the city. This tower was mostly used to dry the fire department's tower hoses. So it just got nicknamed the Hose Tower on there. And in 2015, they demolished that tower, but the city went up into a big uproar about this tower being decommissioned and torn down. It was kind of an eyesore and nobody was really using it. And so it's kind of a play on that with the original groundhog from that English dark mild, but looking at the tower as if it were Michelangelo's David, this work of art, and how we sometimes get too attached to little menial things that really don't even have an effect on us. But protests and all these things created from the tearing down of a tower that hasn't even been used in over 30 years. So it's kind of a play on that.
I love it. I love the humor in that. That's fantastic. So Sully, you've got a background in music.
Yes.
And then design work, and then, so, well, you know what? Why don't you talk to me a little bit about your background in music?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll start kind of like a little spiel on myself personally, and then I can even get into our partners and all that kind of stuff. But myself, born in Timmins, moved to North Bay when I was about 10 years old. So I spent my formative years here. So I do consider North Bay my hometown. It's where I developed most of my friendships, kind of my ideals and morals and all that kind of stuff. I did after graduation. I toured high school graduation. I toured in some of my local bands here across Canada, playing the punk scene kind of thing. It was a punk band, so we were doing that. Moved to Toronto after college, which I went to school for graphic design originally, 3-year program here in North Bay. My girlfriend, now wife, we met in our last year. She was in university, I was at college. She was going to go to Toronto to get her degree in social work as her second degree. And I was smitten by her and gave up everything and decided that Toronto was where I needed to go to be with her. And so in Toronto, I worked some graphic jobs there, but formed some friendships. And in 2008, met some people and joined a band called 10 Kens. From the inception of 10 Kens, probably about 6 months later, we were signed, and that was with Last Gang Records. So that's bands like Metric, Death from Above, Chromeo were on that record label. Chaos was on at that time, Crystal Castles, so stuff like that. And then in the UK and Europe, we were signed with Fat Cat Records. And if somebody are into that kind of music scene, like Frightened Rabbit, which is like a band, Animal Collective, Sigur Rós is a huge band that's on that label as well. So I spent from 2008 to 2000, roughly about 11 or 12 in that band, touring extensively and writing more. We ended up releasing 3 albums with that band. And then as every musician, when non-touring, you're usually either working 1, a restaurant job, or 2 in retail. And with retail, I ended up with the Ferzani Group, which at the time was Sport Check, National Sports, Sport Mart, all those kind of things. And they used me they called my position a product specialist, as well as I would go into stores and design floor plans and like layouts of certain things. So I started with them doing that, and I could do that remotely as well, which was great for touring. So I could tour as well as work in that side of things, but later got pushed into the marketing aspect, which again, from my background in graphic design, allowed that more free flow into the marketing quite easily. So I spent a lot of time in marketing with that. They later sold to Canadian Tire, and at that point I jumped ship from them when they were bought by Canadian Tire to start working with Solomon. And as an outdoor adventure person myself, snowboard, ski, trail run, all that kind of stuff, it seemed like a perfect fit. So I started working with them in their marketing department, both in the Toronto location as well as their office in Markham. And so, yeah, I lived in Toronto for about that time, and during that time, I ended up indulging in craft beer quite a bit.
That would be the easiest place to do that.
Yeah.
So what did you play?
Bass is my main instrument,
Yeah,
and that's what I played with in 10 Kens. I do dabble in a lot of other stuff as well. We just like to have fun. My wife also runs a music school here in North Bay. Music's kind of all around the house. We have pianos, guitars, lying around, drums, all that kind of stuff. So, but bass is my main instrument. I also currently play with a country superstar, Corey Marks, if anybody's ever heard of him. He just released an album, and like Mick Mars from Motley Crue's on it, Travis Tritt, all that kind of stuff. So sometimes in the off times I head out on the road with him as well.
in other words, you don't let the grass grow under your feet.
No.
So currently right now, what's your favorite style of music?
My favorite style of music?
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't think I can really pinpoint anything. With the lockdown and everything, I'm also become a delivery driver as well. So sales, marketing, delivery, you name it. Right now, there's kind of three of us here with two other part-time staff. So long days, but music on my Spotify. So for all the car rides, whether I'm headed to Sault Ste. Marie or Huntsville or wherever area I'm going to deliver beer, is everything from like 90s kind of punk to instrumental funk, hip hop rap stuff, especially like Tribe Called Quest era, we'll say 90s hip hop, De La Soul, all that kind of stuff. I like a little, not so much metal, but there are certain, I'll say hardcore bands, maybe like Every Time I Die, Norma Jean, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I'm all over the place when it comes to music. Like today in the tap room, it was pretty slow because we had a snowstorm up here, and we were actually blasting Dua Lipa and Lizzo, like loud. So we're all over the place.
Eclectic. I love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it.
For those that haven't listened to that Dua Lipa album, if you're a fan of new disco, man, go check her out. It's killer.
Before we switch to the next beer.
Yep.
Underneath North Bay.
Yep.
53.4. And I 1424 under the hose tower. What is there significance to the number?
No, that's just our excise number.
Okay.
So we just put it has to be on cans that get submitted to LCBO or beer store. So we just put it on all our cans in case we ever decide we want to, and that way we don't ever have to go to redesign the labels and pay extra money out. It's just done as is going out. So yeah, just excise.
Okay. Someone asked it. I thought I should ask what it's for. After we switch to the next beer, I'd like you to talk to us about who the biggest influence on you musically is.
Yeah, for sure.
Which beer are we going to next?
So we'll head over to our 137 Rye Pale Ale.
Okay.
Here. Again, pours a little like darker gold kind of color, a little bit lighter than the hose tower actually, but for me anyways. We got Cascade and Centennial hops in this. So Cascade bringing that kind of grapefruity citrus, where we find this Centennial in this brings out a little bit more of that pine on it. Loosely based off an American style APA with Canadian Pale Ale malt as the vast majority of the grain bill, with 25% of that being rye. In case you haven't noticed, two of the four beers that we're going to be sipping tonight have rye in them. We are big rye fans, so we do put it in a lot of beers. And so, yeah, like I said, loosely based off an American style pale ale, but hard to put in that category because we don't do any dry hopping. So this is all hopped in the boil itself. So no dry hopping on this.
Yeah.
A lot of late addition boil hops added in there. And so that's where that aroma is coming from. And this is one of our 4 core beers and our first LCBO entry that went in November.
It's very subtle.
Yeah. Being in the north, we have 4 core beers in our lineup. So all our numbers. So I know some of you put in orders and you picked up a lot of those. We have our 137 Rye Pale Ale, our 626 Pils, 1117 India Session Ale, as well as our 503 Dark Rye Lager. All numbers, I'm sure someone's going to ask about the numbers because it's a common question. So all the numbers are tied to transportation systems, because all 4 transportation systems played a major part in where North Bay is today. So all that is represented also on the can work. So if you have those cans kicking around, for instance, 137 is for water. You can see the canoe here. And that's the amount of time, approximately in minutes, it used to take to complete the lavage portage. So that's connecting our 2 lakes together, which is from Trout Lake to Lake Nipissing. It also technically is where the two watersheds meet. So everything from Trout Lake overflows to the St. Lawrence, and everything from Lake Nipissing overflows to Hudson Bay. So essentially it's like a big connecting pathway in there as well. 626 is for, here I have that can. We got our 626 pills. That's for air travel with the Flying Bunny. And that's for the number, there's a CF-100 Canuck plane. We have a massive airport up here. We were a huge military Air Force base. When I was growing up, there was tons of CF-18s flying overhead in my neighborhood because I lived right below Airport Hill. So a lot of plane moving around and that kind of stuff. So there is a plane, one of those fighters on display in our park, and 626 is written on the side of that plane. So 626 is tied to North Bay in that way. Fun also fact about our airport is that the landing strip there, we did land planes here in North Bay when 9/11 happened, but we were also a backup landing strip for space shuttles in NASA's program because our runway is long enough to actually handle the speed of those aircrafts coming in and being able to stop in time. We got also our 1117 India Session Ale is another core beer, again, number. And that's because we're the intersecting city for Highway 11 and 17, which is the two major northern highways. Also the reason we have the name Gateway of the North, which is then titled Gateway City Brewery, because at one point in time, you couldn't get anywhere in the north without passing through North Bay. So there was no highway from Parry Sound up to Sudbury. There was no way of cutting through Algonquin Park over to Ottawa. You had to come to North Bay, head east, west, or keep going up the North Highway on the Trans-Canada itself. So that's for road travel. And then we got our 503 Dark Rye Lager is also our fourth core, and that's for rail travel, which is the roller skating dude on the rail tracks as they go around. And that's the number of an old steam engine that's on display behind our Discovery Museum downtown North Bay. There's a big steam engine on display, and it is the 503 steam engine. So that's for rail travel.
That's fantastic, Sully. I love that.
Yeah, thanks.
So, who's your biggest influence in music?
I'm all over the place just like that, but I would say we'll go kind of two ways on this. One is that punk music. When I first started playing music, punk was my thing. I played in a band called Corrupt Government. It was a horrible grade 8 punk band, just as you'd assume. It was basically a NoFX, Pennywise, and Bad Religion cover band. Threw in the odd Good Riddance or Face to Face song. We sucked, but we loved it. But a lot of my influence comes from that music. So a lot hard, loud, fast kind of stuff, as well as a lot of my takeaways when it comes to society and morals and all that kind of stuff. So the punk scene's very inclusive. At least it was in North Bay, and I feel like it's a lot of that talk within the punk scene itself, and definitely created. But I would say my biggest influence today might be Wolfpack, which is a funk band that now I believe they are based out of New York, but from Michigan, and they are the most DIY band you can possibly get. And the stuff that they do is incredible. Zero record label. They just 2 years ago, they put out one Instagram post and sold out Madison Square Gardens in less than 3 weeks, which is crazy. Zero advertising dollars spent on that. They're making hand over fist and money, and they're doing it in the most DIY way possible. And just not only very talented musicians, just their take on the whole thing and how they approach marketing to the band and all that kind of stuff is a huge influence on me right now. And especially because like craft beer, I'd love a lot of budget money in my marketing plan, but at the same time, it's not always the case. So trying to come up with innovative ways to do marketing, especially guerrilla kind of marketing, and they're a big influence on me for that reason.
So you're the brewery's vegan, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So how does that impact on your brewing style or process?
It's not necessarily, like the vast majority of beer out there is vegan. We have branded so that the vegan symbol is on all the cans. So there are 3 partners in the brewery. There's Jeff Hodge, Mike Perot, and then myself. Mike and I are both vegan. So when we were starting this, it was hard for us we had to let Jeff know, and Jeff is known we're vegan forever, that making money off animal byproducts is not in our morals. So it would be hard for us to put some of those animal byproducts in our beer and actually make a profit from it for an industry that I'm not supportive of. I don't try to push it on anybody, so don't worry, I'm not going to get into a spiel of why everybody should be vegan, just so we're clear. If you want to talk to me about it, love to on a side note, but you guys do you, I'm going to do me. But the brewery is vegan. So production-wise, again, we don't use any we don't have a filtration system, so we do a lot of temperature control to get most of the sediment out of beer itself. But again, that doesn't get everything, so we have to use fining agents, but we never use gelatin, and we don't use biofine with fish products in it. So we do have to source out some different products, fining agents that are plant-based, so to say, to get that out. The other thing for us is that we'll never use lactose or honey in a beer. So those hoping that Gateway City Brewery might do their version of a milk shark one day, it's probably not going to happen. I'm sorry to say. So you guys can go to Bellwoods and get that if you want. And then also a lot of those new slush beers have lactose, as well as slime beers, which seems to be picking up popularity, has tons of gelatin in it. So you won't be seeing those from us either, unless there's some other way we can possibly do it without those things.
My best friend, who's like a brother to me, is an award-winning vegan chef.
Nice.
I'm going to go through his cookbook and see if I can find you an alternative. Okay.
Sounds good. We would like to. There's like we definitely check a lot of homebrew forms and stuff, and especially with the States, because they had way better homebrew laws, so they're a little bit ahead of the game too there than Canada is and Ontario. And some people are saying that yams are actually like a lactose. They give a little bit of sweetness to it. So we might try it on the pilot system, see how it goes, and go from there. But I'm sure it's probably way different. And again, I can't compare because I haven't had a milkshake beer ever.
Well, then that's very valid, isn't it? I'm intrigued by, I have a number of friends who are musicians who have become vegan. Is that a function of being on the road, or did you do it from an ethical point of view?
No, I can honestly say that besides, like, I play in a lot of bands with Mike, one of my business partners. His family owned Music City here in town, which was a local music store, which just before the brewery opened, ended up selling to Long McQuaid. And so I play in a lot of like bar bands with him in town when we're not out either working here or touring with other stuff. And besides him, I haven't played in a band with another vegan. So road life sometimes gets a little tricky, especially when you're trying to do riders and stuff like that. Cooks don't like making more than one meal. So I usually get a desk there a lot of times when we head into those restaurants and stuff for riders' meals and stuff. But no, it definitely doesn't. It gets a little tricky. And more so now, it's a little bit easier on the road to do some of those things. Before, I would have to really meal plan and plan out what, like, when we're leaving in the morning, what stops are along the way, and what one of those restaurants, especially because a lot of stuff is fast food or quick meals that we're just grabbing to go because we either have a radio show that we have to get to or something like that. So there was a lot of planning beforehand, but now there's a lot more stuff that has become readily available in the last like 3 years that is making it a little bit easier.
That's for sure. There is a lot more alternatives out there now for a person who wants to be a vegan. Troy asked an interesting question. How do you decide on the artwork for your cans? You just leave it in the hands of your graphic artist?
Yeah, well, yes and no. Like, he comes up with the artwork for the most part. The direction mostly comes from myself. So with I'm a little sticky on some of that stuff, especially with our logo and stuff when initially designing. He went through a lot of revisions with me, and I thank him a lot for sticking it out with me because I was kind of hard on him. But every beer we have is named for something local. So we, again, like most craft breweries, one, we're always looking to make the best craft beer possible, or the best quality craft beer possible. And two is to be as community oriented as possible. And part of that is by naming beers and kind of giving a history to maybe some unknown things or unknown areas of the town that just people can be proud of. So when we name the beer, a lot of that is based off of that itself. So like I mentioned before with the host tower, it's a play off of the fact that the tearing down of this tower was a big deal to people. And for some reason created this, there was protests and whatnot about this petitions getting signed. So it's a play on that kind of stuff. So he gets to, we give a lot of ideas and have brainstorming sessions. When we come up with the name and we settle on that name, him and I have brainstorming sessions about some possible ways to go, but he gets to take it kind of in any direction that he wants to go. And for the most part, it's all good. For instance, one thing we've ever had to do in the last like two to three labels anyways is the next beer we're going to be tackling is the Dysfunctional Mall, which is the rye Pilsner. And on that is a play on Adam to Eve. So I'll tell a bit about the story and then we can actually get into that beer if you want to. Dysfunctional Mall is based off a Tom Green skit. So all familiar with Tom Green. Back in his cable TV show days in Ottawa, he passed through North Bay, and there is a strip mall as soon as you come in off Highway 11. And at the time, well, one of the places is just moved below, but Fanny's, which is our local strip club, was right next door to the Bible store. And so he had a skit, and he called it Dysfunctional Mall, where he made the two managers meet and have lunch together. We entitled it Dysfunctional Mall for that reason. And the label itself is a little bit of play on that with the whole Adam to Eve thing, except it's not apples, it's hops. And then it goes around to this chaosy kind of side. Originally, Adam and Eve were pretty in the buff, we'll say. But we decided to touch that up a bit, and that was one of my only critiques, is to maybe get them not looking so nude. So we went with the hop vine kind of toga look on that itself.
That's a fantastic story. Wow. Well, talk to me a little bit more about this beer.
Yeah, so this is a rye Pilsner. We're using German Pilsen malt in there with German rye, malted rye, as well as flaked rye. And then we hop this. There's no bittering hop, so all the bitterness comes from that Hallertau Mitzelfrüh hop, which is a German hop. And then we dry hop the crap out of it as well with the same hop. So it's a one hop, dry hopped rye Pilsner. Pours a nice kind of gold color, and from that hop itself, you're probably getting some sweet citrus, maybe something like an orange or mandarin, and then some earthy kind of floral tones as well, synonymous with a lot of German hops that are out there. I would say currently it's my current fave in our lineup. I'm a big dry hop lager fan. You can probably put anyone in my face and I'm gonna eat it up for the most part. So, or drink it up, I guess. But yeah.
How do you decide, besides the core, how do you guys decide what beer you're gonna brew?
For the most part, just like our design work, John kind of pitches all the ideas to us, why he thinks certain styles should be made. Our bringing John, so John Palco is our brewer. So like the three partners, and then there's John. John is originally from Niagara Falls. I'll give a little bit of background on John before we go into that. So John's from Niagara Falls, ended up going to school, Carleton University in Ottawa. He got his MA in organic chemistry. Ended up not being able to find a job in Ontario, so we moved out west. Started working probably as a dishwasher out in some bars out in Alberta, brew pubs, I'll say, Banff, and then some of those people recognized his skill and got him into those brew pubs as a junior brewer. He later worked his way as to become the head brewer of the Jasper Brewing Company out there, and then decided to move home after about 6 years of that. He decided to move home closer to Ontario with family. His brothers and sister were having children, wanted to be around. And we noticed on his LinkedIn page that there was a space there. So we decided to contact him. He brought up some of his beers, and from that point on, he joined our team almost. And so we give John, because he is not vegan as well. And not to say that we're putting restrictions on him, but we are in that way that we're not allowing him to use certain things. We kind of give him free reign in the brew house to an extent. So there are some ideas. Sometimes we'll pitch around what we think is going to work best. Styles he likes, we'll let him know styles that we've tried. Every Tuesday we all get together. We sample other breweries' beer from wherever it may be. Nice thing about the brewing industry is beer trading is super fun with other breweries, and they do it freely. So if anybody's passing through town, their rep stops here, drops off beer, we give beer, all that kind of stuff. So we get to try a lot. We always go to the LCBO, pick up other stuff, and then again, we see some stuff from around the country, friends passing through Quebec or even out west. We just had some Good Robot out in Halifax. We just had some of their beers last week. So we kind of pick and choose what we're liking. If there's a beer that we like and we're like, oh, what's that hop they're using? We'll decide on there. But yeah, for the most part, John gets to do kind of whatever he wants in the brew house.
You guys were lucky to get him, weren't you?
Yeah. Well, we originally, it was the three of us, Jeff, Mike, and myself, and it wouldn't have started, but we did have a fourth, which was our friend Kevin O'Reilly. He is a biologist by trade, and he runs the biology department up at Nipissing University, and he is an award-winning home brewer. He has brewed with Bose, Stack, as well as some others around the province. And when we were getting super close to pulling the trigger, he decided that it kind of wasn't for him. I understand that having children, a stable job at a university, and moving into a brewing industry could be a little scary too. So he ended up backing out, but we decided to pull the trigger anyways. And probably a week later is when we actually bought our equipment and signed our lease. So there was kind of no turning back. So then that was a part where it was kind of a mad scramble to find somebody. We had about 2 or 3 others that we looked at before, but then John fell into our lap. And when he brought us up the beers, it was kind of a no-brainer to go with John for us anyways.
So what was that like? You pulled the trigger, you order your equipment, and then there's that gap between when you start to when you finally get there, and everything that happens between those 2 points.
Yeah, and nothing goes according to plan ever. So super scary, especially just having one of the 4 original and who is going to be the head brewer back out. But we'd already invested in so much anyways in getting these floor plans designed and working with consultants for that kind of stuff that we didn't want to back out anyways. So yeah, again, super scary walking into the brewery for the first time in a complete empty space. That's one of the reasons we picked this place, is that there was nothing in it. We're the first tenants here. So we got to kind of design exactly the way we wanted it without having to retrofit, worry about what was where and all that kind of stuff. Nice thing, like for both, we come from business, so I'm from that marketing area, graphics and sales as well. Mike, family ran Music City here in North Bay, so business background, having knowledge. All 3 of us, Jeff, Mike, and I are from North Bay originally, so that we do have a lot of connections and ties here, so we knew we were going to get a lot of support. But we did have jobs leading up to, so money wasn't a big thing well, money is always a big thing when you're trying to buy all this stainless steel. It's not cheap. But job-wise, we weren't in it thick yet. We hadn't left our jobs. So, but once we did jump ship from our day jobs to go brewery full-time, which was September of 2018. Construction started in April 2018. We jumped ship September 2018. And then we finally opened our doors at the end of December 2018. And that whole time, nerve-wracking. You're putting a lot out there, and hopefully that people are going to embrace it. And although you think you have a lot of friends, your 50 close friends aren't going to support this facility by themselves. And if they do, they probably should be looking to get some help. That's a whole different story. Yeah. Also exciting at the same time. We're proud of what we do here. And so we knew we were building a brand that we were going to be super proud of. So it was a super exciting time to finally get it out there. Social media wise, we started playing the long game. We started making posts, secret posts almost. If you start looking at our Instagram from day one, we were just posting beer cans, kegs, that kind of stuff with like teasers of labels. They weren't our actual labels, although they were done. We weren't releasing them yet. So it was a lot of teasing going on. And so I was excited to see the buzz around it that way as well.
So you answered the question I was going to ask, what it was like walking into that space the first time.
Yeah, we're a 5,000 square foot facility, and it was huge, or it seemed massive. Now that it's fairly full, we're like, man, we wish we had some more. At the same time, the brewing industry is super open. So like I mentioned before, I worked for Solomon, and there is no way that I could walk into Rosignol and go like, hey, so can I get some info on what you guys are doing here? They would instantly probably call the police. Where you walked into any other craft brewery in Ontario and said, yay, like, yeah, we're like, for instance, Mike and I, we were going to see Clutch down in Toronto, December 2017 area. And yeah, we have to pass by Sawdust. So, you know, we got to stop at Sawdust on our way down. They were pretty slow days. So the guy's like, you on a tour? And we're like, full disclosure, we're trying to open a brewery. And they're like, well, then you get the extended tour. So they took us into the basement. They're showing us the barrel age program. Like they basically would have showed us their books if we really asked, I think, to be like, yeah, like, and then they were giving us pointers of who suppliers to deal with. It was a lot to take in at that time too, because we didn't think they were going to be so open. We were just like trying to remember everything they were saying in the car, like typing it in our phones afterwards. Like, what did they say about this guy? And it's definitely a very welcoming industry in Ontario for sure.
It certainly is. Everybody in the industry is so willing to talk to everybody else. That's so nice. You were there open for about a year and a little bit, and COVID happens. How did that change your message? It changed how we do things. As far as message goes, I don't think it really ever changed our message. Craft beer is about supporting local, and always kind of has been in the Ontario region. And that blew up even more. I think a lot more people became aware of what was in and around their area, whether it was clothing stores, restaurants, all that kind of stuff. It kind of helped push the message that supporting your community is a great thing. And so being in that, like, we've always wanted to support our community as much as possible, whether that's creating jobs, creating space for people to use, taking part in community events, doing fundraising efforts, all that kind of stuff is something we've always looked forward to doing when we were initially planning that brewery. And I think the pandemic and COVID, when it did lock down, helped push those messages even further than we could have hoped. Troy's curious where your market is. Is it the 417 corridor? Is it north? Is it south? Is it all over the place now?
Up until recently, it was essentially North Bay was almost solely supporting us, with Sudbury as well, and a few restaurants in the north who would come down to grab our stuff. North Bay has been a big supporter of us, and at times it felt like it was hard to keep up, especially during summer months, we were getting a ton of support from them. And then as we've started to grow and production has picked up a little bit, we've extended, especially losing licensees has been like with the pandemic hitting. We've had 3 sales channels up until that point, which were licensees, our tap room, and then our retail fridge. So when March of last year hit, we lost 2. So restaurants and our tap room were gone. They didn't exist anymore. So all we had to do was our fridge. We didn't have LCBO. Licenses weren't out yet for restaurants to actually sell after, like sell goods to go. So that wasn't an option. So we quickly tried to jump onto the LCBO, which we did with our 137, which again, quickly in AGCO and LCBO terms is not quickly. Anything government paperwork takes a while. So it took us probably about 6 months. We finally got accepted in November. And then from there, we branched out LCBO wise all the way to Sault Ste. Marie to the west, and to Huntsville to the south of us. And that's kind of basically it at the moment.
Devil's Desert Imperial Red.
Yeah. Yeah, this is our Devil's Desert Imperial Red. We'll start with the beer and then I'll get into the name and the label, because I'm sure people seem to want to know. So that's great. This is a 7.5 red ale. It's using exclusive Best Malts, which is a German malting company. Their patented Red X malt. So it is only 1 grain. They're pretty secretive on how exactly they get their Red X malt. So it's kind of a little unknown to us, but we've had 2 beers with it and we've loved the color that it brings out. And then we hopped that with a nice kick of Centennial hop in there to give it that kind of traditional American kind of Northwest kick to it. So it brings out a little bit of that citrus as well as some big pine in there. We needed to put a lot of those hops in there to balance out the big maltiness of that Red X malt. And because we used so much of it to get it to 7.5, it took a lot of hops to get up there to balance that one out. Cheers.
Cheers.
So Devil's Desert, I'm sure people are curious on the name. It is, Mike and I grew up just behind the brewery here in a little neighborhood called Thibault Terrace. It sits on the Laurentian kind of hillside. And so the forest or bush area was our kind of backyard growing up as kids. And there's a plot of land up there that's probably about, we'll say 2 to 3 acres worth of just red sand. And it got, if you pull up a satellite view of it too, you can see even from the satellite views, this big area of red sand. It got nicknamed Devil's Desert. One, because probably because of that awesome 80s boom of people thinking that there was a lot of devil worshippers out there, that our parents told us to avoid those areas because that's where those devil worshippers go. Just college and high school kids partying, and they just didn't want us to be a part of it. And so Devil's Desert, yeah, it's just a synonymous party spot in North Bay that my generation knew as a hot spot for partying. So we decided to name a red beer. It just seemed perfect to go Devil's Desert with a big red beer. So that's where we went with it. And then, yeah, we got the little bat on there as well.
Love childhood personal stories. What's next for the brewery?
Looking at some more tanks in here for us for production wise. Starting to hit grocery, so hopefully in that area you might see some of our beer in those area too. We're trying to push for 2 more SKUs in the LCBO. A lot of breweries are trying to do that right now because it's as much as we wanted to to critique and kind of rip on the LCBO in past. It's now saving some breweries in Ontario's butts. So we're jumping on board too. We're going to put 2 more in there, and then look to start heading to bigger markets as well. And then one of our partners down south, who I won't name because I don't think they've even named it publicly yet, but has bought a warehouse along the 400. So we'll eventually end up getting some beer in there and then down into the southern area for LCBO and grocery as well. So hopefully within the next, we'll say 3 months, that's all probably going to start to move pretty quick. And while the LCBO part for getting 2 more SKUs probably won't take that quick, but getting our 137 into other areas probably will be within the next 3 months or so. So hopefully by summer. And then again, summer's hitting, which is beer drinking season. So get our patio started up, which we didn't plan on having a patio initially, but due to COVID, we decided that we had to move into patio world because we couldn't open up without it last year. But people seem to like it. We are in an industrial area, so if you like big trucks getting worked on, we're the best patio in Ontario for that. Transport trailer trucks and all that stuff right across our parking lot. And that guy's a genius on that stuff. So we got our patio probably opening up, and then hopefully hopefully some events. We do a lot of events here at the brewery that we're really missing right now. We have our selfie pinball league, so we're big pinball players. So we have 4 rotating pinball machines. Same company that services Tilt and Cabin Fever in Toronto also supply us our pinball machines and service our pinball machines. So we'll get that up, hopefully running. That'll probably be one of the first things to get up. And then we do have, like in the summer, our brewery yoga that we run on Saturday mornings. And then hopefully get into some of our other stuff too that we do.
That's fantastic. I love the pinball concept.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
And it's great because they are rotating, so people don't get bored of them. When the machine seems to be getting stale with money, another one comes up, that one goes away. So there's constantly a rotation in there.
So I got 2 questions I do have to ask. One comes from Shiraj in Toronto. If you were going to take one risk this coming year, what's that risk going to be?
One risk.
It's a software question because that's what he wants to.
I'm not too sure. A risk might be looking at something like possibly looking to export to other provinces, maybe, depending again on pandemic. Summer months are really hard production-wise here because beer moves a lot faster in the summertime. So we definitely would need to get more tank space for that. But maybe I think more the bigger risk would be John's plate, where he's brewing beers that he's not 100% or hasn't brewed before. So getting the science behind that, talking with other brewers about what worked best for them in the past kind of thing. But I think we always take a big risk here because there are breweries out there that aren't what we'll call hype breweries. Like I think we're one of the few breweries that like since our inception, we've only released, I think, 6 IPAs. If you tried to do that, I think in the Toronto area, it might not be as successful. But we like a lot of other styles of beers, not to knock IPAs, like they're probably what got me into it in the first place. But we do like to expand our palates. And I think that's always a little bit of a risk in some of the beers that we do here. Like we've done 3 milds now, 2 light lagers in a year and a half. All those were done, as well as doing other styles like Roggen beer, which I haven't actually seen anybody else do in Ontario. But again, we like rye, or John likes rye, which he's converted most of us into liking rye as well, and the flavor and complexity that it brings. So I think just looking for newer, different styles that aren't IPAs is always going to be on our mind, as well as I don't want to say it's super risky. It doesn't seem like, it seems very lackluster when you say like brewing other styles besides IPAs is risky, but sometimes it can be. And especially the way the market is right now. I'm sure the LCBO trends, you can, if you look at their numbers, I don't know if you ever look at those, but IPAs are definitely what's selling. So it does get a little tricky when you're not making those as often.
It's true. It's true. And owning a microbrew is a big risk to begin with.
Yeah.
It's a lot of long hours, a lot of hard work, not a lot of margin sometimes.
No.
And I can imagine for you in the summertime, just coordinating your tanks to keep your 4 core brands going takes a lot of work.
Yeah, just with that, as well as, so I haven't mentioned yet, but one of our biggest challenges with COVID hitting, not only just having 2 of our 3 sales channels go, is, and I mentioned before that no construction ever, 1, gets done on time, or 2, comes in on or under budget. So due to over budget on construction, delays and that kind of stuff, we were forced to make some cuts. And one of those things was a canning line. And especially with 3 mobile canning companies in Ontario, we decided that might be the best option. But when COVID hit, it really played with us. Nobody really knew what was going on. So our Northern Canning, they decided to not let the workers stay overnight. So usually they would come up, they would finish at a brewery in the North Toronto area. They would come up on the Tuesday night, kind of do a little setup, and then we'd start packaging, and then probably pull out almost like 9,000 cans of beer off the line from about 8 till about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then we would leave. But with that setup not being able to happen, so what they would do is they would leave at 6 in the morning from their warehouse facility in Toronto, drive up, get here hopefully by like 11, set up by 12, and then they would have to be done by 3:30 so that they could be back on the road, and still within their 12-hour time frame of Ontario laws. Especially with traveling, you don't want your employees to be overly tired. So I get that, but it was definitely a struggle to coordinate how we were going to get out the beer we needed for that spring summer season, especially with COVID hitting in April. It definitely, we went from, I think 12 beers in April down to 5. And at one point, the last week of May, we only had 4 beer available because we just didn't have the means to actually get it into cans. So canning line has been our top priority. We love our Northern Canning crew. They do an amazing job. They're constantly testing, and we feel that when we do our sensory tests on a weekly basis with the cans that we have, they do a really good job of making sure those DO levels are down in the beer, dissolved oxygen, as well as making sure it's carb to the area that we want to keep it so that it doesn't leak and all the seals are done. But having that canning line is going to be a huge help for us in production itself.
Yes, I can understand that. Galen would like to know, he puts it this way: I'm planning a great big huge canoe trip and I'm on my way up to your area. Which one of your beers would I pick up?
Man, that beer is such a subjective thing that what my palate might like is something what somebody else's palate might not. And I think that's why we try to get, like right now we have 14 beer in stock, and hopefully we can lead someone into one of those areas depending whether they're a craft beer fan or not. Because even with craft beer, like for instance, myself, my palate, I'm not a huge traditional Hefeweizen or German wheat beer fan. It's just something I can appreciate. I get the skill that goes into it. I get that the Weizen yeast strains, but it's just not something that palate-wise is totally for me. So when you're planning your canoe trip, definitely come up, and our retail shop's always open, and we're always happy to talk beer and hopefully lead you in that right direction. We definitely try to knowledge ourselves and our staff with other Ontario beers. So not just styles, but other things, so that if someone comes in and says like, I'm a big fan of Royal City's this, or I'm a big fan of Bellwood's that we can hopefully gear them in that right direction as well. So knowing and training our staff on other Ontario styles or popular styles also helps in that respect too. So we can hopefully help point anybody in the right direction. For me personally right now, my faves, Rye Pilsner, the Host Tower, that's probably why I included them in here. I really like easy drinking beers. In the summer, we have two very crushable beers that also are super nice. We always release a double dry hop light lager, so 3.7% area, double dry hopped. The first year we did it with Idaho 7. The second year, last year we did it with Sabro. And then we also have our Electron Express, which I was super happy with. And it's not a very popular style of IPAs, but it's a brute IPA. But I feel John just kills it with his, and it's a super nice, full flavored hop beer that's just nice and dry. It's crushable.
So I have a question.
Yep.
I'm coming to North Bay to visit you.
Yep.
Who's your favorite restaurant or craft bar in North Bay?
You're recording this, right?
I can stop recording this so we can talk about this later.
As a sales manager, one of my licensees might see this and say, what? I have a favorite haunt in North Bay, which is the Raven and Republic. One, due to its proximity. Two, live music. We only have 3 places in North Bay that actually have live music. So as a musician, I always take that. I do enjoy a good DJ as well. But live music is definitely something I'm always looking for. And the Raven Republic hits that. They have 12 taps. They usually keep about 5 of those as a constant, and the other 6 are kind of rotating. So it's a nice, they give you a nice selection, and people do a good job of curating beer lists there. But all our licensees are great. If you're watching, I love you all. And I think you should go to all the restaurants.
I will take that recommendation to heart. So Sully, we've hit the hour mark. Do you have time to continue talking to me?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I live like 3 blocks from the brewery, so this is a home and second home and third home, and I can just walk home real easy.
Yeah. This is your baby.
Yeah.
24/7. What do you think? No, sorry. What do you find that's new and exciting in the craft beer industry right now?
Tough to say, because like I mentioned before, being a vegan brewery, the big trends in craft beer right now involve stuff we're never going to use. So it's, my answer might not be what people want to hear, but I'm on the lager train. Especially dry hop lagers are very exciting to me. Again, we did the Rye Pills. We got another one coming out in about 3 weeks from now. So that kind of stuff excites me. But as far as like the big trends that are hitting right now, again, I haven't tried them. I don't plan to try them. And if people do, that's great. Support those craft breweries. And but the big trends, unfortunately, are something that right now, anyways, the big trends are not something that we're going to be jumping on board with. And personally, they don't excite me on a personal level.
I'm intrigued, because one of the trends that's really become apparent is that people are starting to do lagers and pilsners more now than they've ever done in the craft brewery session.
Yeah, I think as people started going up, like a lot of those breweries initially when opening too, with money, around times like ales you can pump out faster. Now that people have upgraded and breweries are getting more tanks, so they have more time for that lagering stage. I think you're going to see, hopefully some more come out in there. And if that's a trend that is gets hyped, I'm all for it. again, I'm big IPA fan too, so I'm looking forward to trying the different varieties IPAs with some Australian and New Zealand hops becoming more readily available in Ontario and Canada. I think is exciting. Some of those hops are really tasty. We've been doing a lot of stuff with Monteweka in the last year, and it's becoming a favorite of the brewery. So we'll probably be using that a little bit more this year. So that's an exciting thing with some of those newer hop varieties. And then there are some new hop techniques as well that are coming out there with these new German wet hops that are not kind of wet hop. It's a new science that they're coming out with for this. So it'll be interesting to try some of those things as well.
How do you stay on top of what's happening in the craft beer industry?
I think staying on top is in constant communication with your other fellow brewers. They do tend to chat a lot, which is great. Like you can send messages back and forth quite easily. We're in constant contact with a lot of those breweries, whether it's techniques or sales or what places are good to hit. And then I think just being part of the OCB, I know sometimes it gets ripped on quite a bit, but we definitely get a lot of information from them as far as numbers go and trends and sales and stuff like that. So it's been a big help for us, as well as all those other kind of numbers that come out from LCBO that we get, and beer store numbers help us kind of navigate planning, strategies, all that kind of stuff.
If you could travel back in time, what would be the one piece of advice you would give yourself, your younger self?
I don't know. I think I tend to look at life a little different than a lot of people. And it's weird to say, but when I say I have no regrets, it doesn't mean I didn't make any mistakes. And I think I made a lot of mistakes in life, but I definitely learned a lot from those mistakes. And I think that's what life is kind of about. So always constantly learning and growing. I don't know if I'd ever want to tell myself. I know this seems philosophical, and I hate to do that to people. Want to get on a philosophy lesson or anything. I'm not overly like that in personal life, but I just don't think I'd ever want to go back and tell myself to do anything different. I think the mistakes I have made in life, I've grown from them, and I think I wouldn't be where I am today without making them. So I'm pretty happy with the way things are right now. Mind you, like besides the pandemic and working 13 out of 14 days, not the greatest, and hopefully we'll get back to normal soon and we can hire some more staff, but that's not a mistake. That's out of my control. And yeah, I don't know if that seems too philosophical or weird, but yeah, I wouldn't go back and tell myself anything.
It's a philosophical question, and there's no such thing as a weird answer, Sully. Galen asked an interesting question. What does rye bring to the table for you and your beers? Because it seems to be becoming more and more of a trend in the beer industry.
Yeah, I think it adds a complexity to the beer that our palates aren't quite used to. And maybe that trend might go away. But John, when we first brought him up, we brought him up for 3 days. We wanted to show him what North Bay was about because we had to make sure that we're going to mesh as people, and we're also going to have to make sure that he enjoys North Bay because he's going to have to live here. So when we brought him up for 3 days. We took him around town, did all that kind of stuff. But one of his big things was like, I'm going to make rye beer, and I'm going to make sure you guys like rye beer. And so we were like, sure, try to sell us on it. So we brought him up here, and we ended up buying a Blickman 1-barrel pilot system, which we put in his garage. And we started having parties. And the majority of beers that we were brewing were parties. And our friends really liked us because we would have these parties and everybody got to drink for free. So into that, when it was 2018, around that May, June time is when we started throwing these. And as he started making those beer with rye in it, and the vast majority for those parties were rye beers, we started to see the complexity that it brings to the table, in not an over the top way. It's a nice, subtle way to bring extra malt characteristics to the beer. If you ask John, sometimes he regrets he's not pigeonholing himself as that. Like I feel we are definitely known for rye beers, but malted rye doesn't have a husk. So when you're milling that and putting that into the mash tun, it can create some pretty hectic brew days when you're trying to lauder that beer out of that system. And it might have ended up getting a little bit too milled in the process. But we just keep telling him that he's the one that designs it. So you're the one sticking around to clean this mess up, bud.
It's your mess. You clean it. I like that. What's the one thing you would like all of us to take away from our chat today?
I think for us anyways, as a brewery, like I said, we like a lot of different styles of beers, and I think getting your palates used to those is always a big takeaway from any kind of craft beer session. I don't know what your other breweries were offering. I tuned in a bit just so I could get an idea of how hard-hitting questions you were going to ask me with. So I did watch a bit, but majority of these beers are definitely, there's an IPA, and I don't think I gave you guys one IPA to try today. And again, it's not that I don't think we like them. It's just we like a whole bunch of different stuff. And right now, this is the ones that I was drinking. So selfishly, I was the ones that got to make the choice of what you were drinking tonight. So sorry, not sorry. And then I think another great thing about the pandemic that hit is the availability of beer in Ontario, especially with shipping. But another big thing is support local. It's great. I love that you guys ordered beer. Super happy, and I hope you enjoyed it. But at the same time, get to your local brewery and support, because without the support of the community itself, we would be nothing. And we're super happy about North Bay, and we hope more people drink our beers, but we also hope that all you guys drink beers within your community the most.
Sully, thank you for taking time.
And,
sharing your expertise and knowledge with us. I have no problem with the beers that you selected, because I thought, oh, he's showcasing his brewery, which is exactly what we're supposed to be doing. So on behalf of everybody tuned in tonight, Beers with Bill, thank you for sharing your story with us. It's great to hear it. It's fantastic to have an opportunity to talk to a brewery in Northern Ontario and to see what's going on.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Thanks to, I'm pointing at the screen where
Megan's sitting.
Megan was kind of the one that initiated this by coming up, and thanks for spreading the love down south for us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And
thank you for coming. This was awesome. And everyone, you should buy more of their beers if you only bought the tasting beers.
No, there was a good selection going out last week. Not only am I a delivery driver, I'm also packager, shipper extraordinaire. So I saw all the beers going out, and everybody was ordering quite a good selection, or what I think is a good selection. Vast majority, almost every single one. So it's cool.
Chief cook and bottle washer.
And also, if you have any other questions for me, don't hesitate. I'm the one that runs all the social media. So drop me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. I'm the one answering. So if there's any other follow-up questions that you may have, by all means, or also Sully@gatewaycity.ca is my email. So yeah, hit me up anytime. Love to chat.